this is a lecture or lecture tour organized by Access, American Culture Center Network. And we have some guests here. Professor King, and he will deliver lecture later. And the director of Access, Center for American Culture in Arizona State University, Dr. William Paige. And Professor Hall from Johnson Smith University, and she will deliver speech in the evening at 7:30, I think, downstairs in room 107. And their students, Paige, would you say hello to Reggie? Paige. Okay, Paige. Yeah. And firstly, I would like to invite Dr. William Paige to have a few words about Access. Okay.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Professor Yang for inviting us to Chengdu. We're very happy. And we're very honored to be on your campus with you. So it's a great opportunity for us. It's the first time for my colleagues to be on this campus. But it's not my first time. So I love Chengdu. And I actually have a lot of Chengdu students in my classes at Arizona State University. So it's a great pleasure to be here. So thank you. So we're having a tour. And our objective is to talk about American culture, right? So American culture is difficult to understand, right? Difficult. But Chinese culture is also once you go to Guangzhou, you go to Chengdu, it's all different, right? Many regions are different. And so on this tour, this is a multicultural tour. So multicultural is what? Different cultures, right? So United States is not one culture. So this tour we're talking about the Black American experience in the United States. My colleagues, as you can see, his shirt says the historically Black College. That's what this university is, forms a network of historically Black colleges. What is a historically Black college? Any ideas? Any ideas?
Music, like the blues.
It's the blues. It's the blues. A historically Black college. Any other ideas?
Street dance.
It's street dance. Okay.
Hip hop.
You mean it's a university where they focus on hip hop?
Focus on the Black cultures.
They focus on Black cultures. Okay. All right. Who else? What is a historically Black college? What is it? Any other ideas?
Maybe the Black people join part in the establishment of the college.
The Black people take part in the establishment of the college. Okay. That's pretty good, right? Okay, so maybe we should say, when did this college start? What year? What year was this college established? Just guess. Guesses. Any guesses?
Maybe after the Civil War.
After the Civil War.
And during the Reconstruction of the South.
And during the Reconstruction of the South. Right? So we had a Civil War in the U.S. What year was Johnson C. Smith formed?
1867.
1867. It's older than Chengdu. 1867. Wow. So that was right after the Civil War. And so maybe Dr. King, Professor King, will, Professor Yvette will say something about historically Black colleges. Could you say something?
Sure. So historically black colleges and universities. So there's an acronym that we use, HBCU, historically black colleges and universities. Most were formed as a result of there being discrimination in the established. They would not allow African Americans to go to school there. And so we began to form our own with the help of many white people, mostly part of the churches. Many colleges have ties to the churches, institutions, so that African Americans would be able to get a college degree.
Okay. So, anything to add to that?
Sure. I'll roll just directly into. First of all, greetings to you all. Specifically, the Johnson C. Smith University, as was mentioned, was founded on April 7th, 1867, and the benefactor, one of the primary benefactors was the Presbyterian Church. And one of the reasons that HBCUs exist is because, as you mentioned, at the close of the Civil War, there were blacks who had spent their lives as slaves. Many of them had been alive for many generations. After living 50 to 70 years as a slave, or maybe some people who were a little younger, 30 years as a slave, they were 30 years old, they knew nothing else but slavery. So HBCUs were created to educate former slaves, to give them an opportunity at life beyond slavery. You know, a little later on, there was a period called redemption. That period gets left out a lot in history. People don't talk about the redemption period of the United States. But I'm impressed with your prior knowledge of what an HBCU is and how it was founded.
Okay. I would like to invite Reggie to stand up for a minute. Reggie is a student at Johnson C. Smith University. So, could you explain where are you from, and why are you going to a historically black college?
Well, I am from Los Angeles, California, Hollywood. I did not go to high school with a lot of people like myself at the whole. So I wanted to be around a lot of educated black people like myself, because I have not been around that a lot.
Okay. Okay. So, Reggie came all the way from Los Angeles to the other side of the country, to North Carolina, to go to a historically black college. So, very interesting, right? He was also accepted into Harvard, but he chose Johnson C. Smith. So, just want to give you some background on the university system that is historically black university. It has something to do with what our talk is going to be. And do you have any questions about this so far?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is Johnson C. Smith?
Where?
Who is Johnson C. Smith?
Oh, who is Johnson C. Smith?
Johnson C. Smith is his wife. So his wife donated a lot of money for the benefit of the school. As a result, the school was named for her husband. Now, this is interesting. A former student of mine, for up until I want to say 2007, up until the year 2007, individuals did not know what the C stood for in Johnson C. Smith, because individuals who did know died and they didn't record well what the C stood for. So for generations, individuals will ask, so what does the C stand for in Johnson C. Smith? And no one knew the exact answer. So there was a young man who I taught And one of his hobbies was research, like genealogical research. And he discovered that the C in Johnson C. Smith stood for crane, C-R-A-Y-N-E. So the reason for me sharing that aspect of the story is that, think about this, that was lost information from 1867 until 2007. And a student, not a faculty member, not a paid researcher, a student at Johnson C. Smith University was the only person who was able to solve the mystery of what the C stood for. So yeah, Johnson C. Smith, his wife, after he had passed, gave a gift, a large financial gift, and because of that, the name, which before was Biddle Institute. Initially, the school was called Biddle Institute for the same reason, but you may notice, and maybe here in China, when someone donates a large amount of money, a building or a corporation, or for example, the CBA. The CBA, the Chinese Basketball Association, has had different names because different sponsors have paid to have their name reflected. So the C stands for Crane, and Johnson C. Smith, his wife, was a benefactor. And this is why the university carries his name.
Okay. Any other questions about this? So this multicultural lecture series, as we constructed it, is really about understanding race. And so we don't want to deal with race, really. So when I'm together with my friends, we really don't think about race. Dr. Yangguang, I don't think that, oh, his race, what is his race? I don't think that.
I'm yellow.
But we don't, when you become friends with people, you don't see race. You don't really think about that. But unfortunately, in society and in America, we still have many issues and challenges with race. Race is, I look at Jemayne, I look at Dr. King, and, well, he may, because of the visual, because of what he looks like, he may have problems in the United States. Is this right?
This is affirmative. Yes, you're about to ask.
Yes, I think there are many prominent phenomena, like in movies, in TV series, that can be easily detected that some black people are discriminated.
Some black people are discriminated against. Okay. So here we have a group of highly educated black people that you would not think they would be discriminated against. But in every case, I think each one would say, is that part of your life?
Absolutely.
Daily life?
Daily.
Daily life. Could we have some kind of an idea, a general idea of how that affects you in the United States?
By all means. In my neighborhood, a neighborhood I've lived for 12 years. I've lived in the same house for the last 12 years. There are times, and I traditionally I work out daily. There are times where the weather is nice, the way it is outside now, and I will elect to work out in my neighborhood, like either walk hastily or maybe even run. The park is not up here. And I have a girlfriend who does not like when I do that. As a matter of fact, I may text her and say, hey, if I miss a correspondence between you and I, it's because I'm working out. And then she'll ask, are you going to the gym? Because she knows what the other answer is. No, I'm going to do outside cardio. And then she'll text back, hey, before you leave, don't. Could you please go to the gym? And this is why. She's worried that, let's see, and daylight savings time is happening in America, but it gets dark late during a good portion of the year. And she's worried that because of my look, some may find me to be menacing, even though, like a panda, I'm quite friendly, right? we've had discussions about pandas all week. However, to some, I look like a threat. And when you have a threat, people tend to want to eliminate the threat. Now, I will admit, and I knock on wood, I have not had an incident within my own neighborhood. However, I am conscious of things that I won't do when I work out in my neighborhood if it's too late. First of all, the compression gear that I wear when I work out is all black, okay? So when you add darkness with someone who is gargantuan, facial hair, and black, I may look as if I'm attempting to cause someone harm, i.e. break into a home, or I just look like a bad guy. You know, the villain usually is associated with what color? Black. So, even I know that if it's too dark, I'm not going out because who knows what could happen. One of the things that could happen could end in my demise. So she's worried that that will happen and would rather me go to a closed environment to prevent me meeting any harm.
Yeah. So if we see Jemayne running down the street, white people may think, danger. This is dangerous. So there's certain movements that have been developed to counter this idea. Some of them, one recent movement is called Black Lives Matter. You may have heard that. Black Lives Matter. So, big movement in the US now. Do you want to say a few words about that kind of?
Well, I think that what you don't understand if you don't experience it is that it's something that you literally think about, like you said, like Dr. Williams said, every day. I have two sons. They are 15 and 17. And I have to be careful about where they go and who they're with to ensure that no harm comes to them. And if I were a white mom with white boys, I might have some concern, but it wouldn't be the same. Because I not only have to worry about other youth, other teenagers, I have to worry about police. And whether the police, who are supposed to protect and serve, would protect and serve my children the way they would protect and serve someone else's. Oftentimes, my children would be looked at as the perpetrator or the person doing something wrong, even if they had nothing to do with whatever has gone on. So it's very, it's stressful, but it's stress that you don't really realize after a while just as part of our lives. And I think what's most compelling is that when you explain that to other people and they think about it, they realize, wow, yeah, that must be really stressful. So I think conversations like this are important so that there's a better understanding between people.
That's why we have these kinds of dialogues in the US, so that people can understand each other. And so that's one of the reasons we're having this tour. So, without further ado, I'll introduce Professor King, who is a popular professor at Johnson C. Smith, and he's the first professor to have a course in sneaker culture. And he's quite interested in sneakers, and today we were at Taipei, and he's very interested in the different stores of sneakers and how it relates to his research. So, without further ado, please.
Thank you. I bring you all greetings from Charlotte, North Carolina, and Johnson C. Smith University. Before I begin, I want to talk about the excursion we had today, Tahiti, where since we've arrived, we've passed All right, by the way, before I begin, if you have questions at any time, please raise your hand and I will stop so we'll recognize your question. And please feel free to, this is interactive. My courses at JCSU are not me lecturing for an hour, even though I may do so. But there's interaction between me and my students. Today, you are my students. So if there's something you would like to share or question, or if I prompt to ask someone, please feel free. So, Tagili, what we were there today, I looked specifically for Chinese footwear brands. Brands that I actually adore. Some of them I actually have. Raise your hand if you're familiar with a company, Li Ning.
Yes.
Okay. I am a huge fan of Li Ning. Let's see, 1, 2, 4 pair. I own 4 pair. Raise your hand if you're familiar with the brand Anta. Okay. Okay. 361 degrees sportswear. Go ahead. Is there something different? What's so funny about 361? But let me explain to you why these brands, why I was on the search for these brands. We passed the store and I'm like, it looks like a Foot Locker, but it's Anta. It looks like a Foot Locker, but it's Li Ning. So what companies have done, those companies, Li Ning specifically, has been shrewd about getting their product, which is sold primarily here in China, in the American market. If you've ever watched a professional basketball game, or maybe even read a publication that is about basketball, you will see many pictures of athletes. It's rare to see a picture of an athlete without seeing what's on their feet. So when Li Ning wanted to break into the American market, they thought, how do we get a brand that is not known at all in America, And they thought, the big athletes, people like, let's go back to 2006. So someone like LeBron James wouldn't wear that brand at that time because he'd already signed a contract. So the big players, the better the player is, the quicker they're signed to contracts, to endorsements. So they thought, man, how do we get our product on a big name and convince the big name that they should do it? We got an idea. We can. So this is what we'll do. We'll get a guy who was in the NBA, who plays with a guy who's pretty important. And when they take a picture of the guy who's pretty important, who will they also be taking a picture of? Our guy. I want to give you an example of what I'm talking about. There's a man you may know. His name is Damon Jones. Damon Jones played, ironically, he played with LeBron James in Cleveland and in Miami. Look, Damon Jones's game, he was good enough to be in the NBA, but he didn't play a lot. One thing about Damon Jones is that he dressed in an immaculate fashion. He was the best dressed person on his team every time. So when players were getting off the plane, he'd have his suit and he had his bag and he'd walk distinguishedly down and everyone was like, man, look what he's wearing. He's dressed well. Well, Li Ning approached him and said, hey, David, how much money are you getting to wear shoes? He's like, I have to buy my shoes. Not anymore, because we're going to pay you an X amount of money if you'd be willing to wear this Chinese brand. Being the capitalist that he was, he's like, sure, I'll do that. And every time, Neil back then too, every time they took a picture of Shaquille's feet or LeBron's feet or Dwayne Wade's feet, he was standing right next to them at the free throw line. And they got his shoes as well. This is how Li Ning broke into the American market. Now the strategy again, we don't need the big guy. We need a guy who plays on a team with the big guy, because when they get their picture taken, we'll get our picture taken too. And they've grown. So their biggest name after that was a gentleman named Baron Davis. Okay? The cars that I passed out has a logo. I call that logo the Crown Man logo. That logo was inspired by a Li Ning logo called the Boom Man logo, which was the official logo of Baron Davis. So in 2010, I had the opportunity to purchase 2 pairs of B. Davis booms. They were called booms. And they were the most comfortable shoes I've ever worn. And I thought, oh my God, not only is this shoe unique, but it's comfort. I must get more. And before I could buy more, it became a little bit more difficult at that time to buy them in the American market. But Chinese companies, clearly, this is a huge market. Okay, this is all you need. Okay, if you were a company selling shoes here. But typically companies are not satisfied with all they need. They want the world. So it is interesting to see there's a basketball court right next to this building. And there's basketball being played. And as I got out of the car, I looked to see, oh my gosh, look at all these different brands that you can't get in the United States. Or you can't get them easily. So I'll start there. One of the themes of this lecture will be uniqueness. In a city, in a country that you all have a style that is so unique that Westerners are literally attempting to replicate your take on style, which has a Western influence already. So this is unique. Whether you realize it or not, you all are influencing the world regarding fashion, and especially regarding sneaker culture. We'll get to that. Uniqueness. Uniqueness is a part of the culture. The 1960s in the United States, there weren't a lot of choices of shoes. And by the way, shoes during that time were made of a particular material. Does anyone know? Sneakers, we're talking about tennis shoes or sneakers. Does anyone know? Canvas. Okay? Canvas. What are some canvas sneakers that you may wear now? Converse. What particular type of Converse?
All-Star.
All-Star, which is named for which particular gentleman? Good job, boy. Chuck Taylor.
Wow.
Good job. Chuck Taylor. Okay, so let's talk about him for a moment, and I'll mention a few other canvas brands of that time period. Yeah, a lot, because all sneakers were canvas at the time. Well, let me ask you, does anyone know what Chuck Taylor did for a living? But he has his own basketball shoe named his name for him. Chuck Taylor was a salesman. He drove around selling products like insurance and things of that nature. You ever read Glenn Rawson and Garrett? Similar to that, but they were selling like real estate in that particular play. So Chuck Taylor also played AAU basketball. Are you familiar with what AAU basketball is? In America, AAU, it's a level of basketball that, let's see, players who are in high school, the elite players in high school play on AAU teams. They're like amateur club teams. And only the best players get the opportunity to play, or the ones who have influence. Families may have influence. Hey, my child wants to play, I need him on this team. Well, AAU is a early precursor to players going to college and participating in basketball, and those elite end up playing where? In the NBA or the CBA or other professional leagues around the world, because the CBA is a viable option for professional basketball. But Chuck Taylor played AAU, so he never played on a professional team. However, people just think, well, he has his own shoe, he must have been pretty good, and he must have played professional basketball. Chuck Taylor, the Converse Chuck Taylor was one canvas shoe. You may have heard of a brand called B.F. Goodrich. B.F. Goodrich is a tire company in America. However, the rubber that they use to make tires is also the rubber that they use to make what? The sole of their canvas shoe. There's a company called Procad, which is popular worldwide. Procad had a shoe called the Procad Super. Well, if you were to look up the Procad Super, you would see a shoe that looks a lot like the Converse Chuck Taylor. Many times, companies would just take a model of the shoe and brand it their own. We'll talk more about that in this particular lecture. So during the 60s, sneakers were canvas, and they didn't have a lot of options would you select a shoe that was a different color? Like, why would you do something? I see that everyone's wearing shoes, but they're not the same. So why the different colors? Was that too?
To match other dresses.
Okay, so to match your dress with your outfit, your clothes. Any other reason?
To suit your maybe dressing style.
Your style, to suit your specific dressing style, not bad. Anything else? Because that ties into something else I wanted to touch on.
Don't you want to be the same with others?
You don't want to be the same as others. Awesome. Because each of you have unique personalities. Okay? There's something that you may enjoy to read or watch, and there's something that you may not. So we're all individuals. So this is the problem. The shoes, the canvas shoes, specifically the Chuck Taylor, were in two colors, black and what other? What's the other color? White. Okay? And they came in two forms, a high top and an Oxford. An Oxford would be a low top. So individuals who wanted to express their unique personalities had few options. So my next question for you is, if all our shoes are either black or white, all our sneakers are either black or white, how do we express our personalities with our shoes? Draw. Good job. I'm going to talk about that later as well. Perhaps you were drawing them. But this was during a time where individuals weren't that creative. They thought that drawing on their shoes would ruin them. But you're on the right track, because that is close to what else could you do? Especially in the sport of basketball, which we'll talk about in a second as well. So if everyone's wearing the same shoes and we're wearing, let's say, shorts, how do I distinguish myself from you on the basketball court?
You may tie your shoes in a different way.
Yes, may tie them in a different way, but not too different, because I don't want to get hurt. Because remember, I'm playing in what type of shoes? Playing in canvas shoes, and I need support. Someone else said, what was it? Socks. Bingo, thank you. If we're wearing the same, are you familiar, hold on, pause. Are you familiar with a show, an American show called The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? No worries, please, if you get a chance to look at this show, because this is a back in the corner we're going to use. Will Smith, the actor Will Smith, played himself on the show. And he went to a boarding school where they all had to wear a uniform. The inside of his blazer was a particular color. So he would take his blazer and wear it inside out to distinguish himself from the other students. So this is what people who wanted to distinguish themselves, they would wear socks that were unique. They would wear socks that were bold in color. As a matter of fact, people began to associate the color of the socks with the game, how well they played basketball. So it became a situation where there's a gentleman named Pee Wee Kirkland. Pee Wee Kirkland he attended Norfolk State University and ended up playing in the NBA with the Chicago Bulls. But Pee Wee Kirkland said that if you had on bold socks, you couldn't step into a basketball court unless you played well. Meaning your socks signified, if you had on crazy colored socks, that meant that you really could play basketball. So, after that time period, companies got smart. So we're going to move forward to 1970 through 1974. During that period, there was the emergence of leather suede, and basketball culture began to become what we call popular culture. Now, the suede in 1970 is a little different from the suede we have now. The suede in 1970 was so pure that if you rubbed it, it may have moved, right? Because it was that close to being a cow. But during that time, there was a company named Adidas. Are you familiar with Adidas? Adidas crafted and marketed the first $100 shoe. Now, let's think in the long of 2017 money. We're talking about a shoe that was $100, a sneaker that was $100 in 1972. Okay? That was unheard of. Most people were unwilling to pay $100 for a sneaker. And to be quite honest, the demographic that they wanted at that time probably couldn't afford a $100 sneaker, but this is how they sold it. It was the first sneaker that featured 100% leather. And also, it featured, we're going to use the term technology. Technology as we proceed. The toe box. It had a perforated toe box. Does anyone know what that is? Let's see, I'm not wearing that. I don't have a, yesterday I had on a pair of shoes that had a perforated toe box. A perforated toe box looks like this. All right, this is the toe box area. So there were holes. Why were there holes? Yes, for air, because now you're wearing a shoe that's not as breathable because it's leather. So if you're active when you leather shoe, your foot may get hot. And they had those air holes. The same way you ever have like a pet turtle or some type of animal in a box, and you make the holes in the box so they can breathe. Same thing for your feet. So it had perforated toe box. And this is the thing that really helped sell this shoe. The shoe was called the Adidas Top 10. It was attached to the top 10 players in the NBA at that time. I need you to think about how powerful that is. The top 10, the best players in the NBA, the top 10, top 10%, all wore this shoe. It was named for them. Could you name, let's not even go 10, could you name the top 5 players in the NBA right now? Who's that? James, LeBron James. All right, who's next? In no particular order, it doesn't matter what order you put them in, but just give me the top. Like, Kobe, recently retired, but he's so good, let's count him in there as well, because I'm a Laker fan and I don't have a problem with that at all. Okay? Kobe, who else? Give me your third. Shaquille, he's retired, but you know what? I'm a Laker fan, so let's go ahead and put him in there as well. Give me 2 more. Steph Curry, okay. Another bad guy when she played for my team. And one more. Jordan? Michael Jordan. He's been retired for a while, but he's of legend, and let's count him in. So the 5 players you named, I'm going to give you the shoes that they wear. The first person you said was LeBron James. LeBron James wears Nike, and he just signed a $1 billion contract for the rest of his life to endorse Nike products. You mentioned Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant is retired, however, he's been with Nike since the year 2004, and they continue to make his shoe even though he is retired. You next mentioned what, Shaq? Shaquille, this is unique. Shaquille O'Neal has had numerous shoe contracts, and one of the reasons is because the bigger you are, the less likely you are able to sell shoes. As a fact, you're familiar with David and Goliath, right? The myth, the legend of David. The bigger you are, people don't find you to be as likable. Coming from a big guy, right, who's likable. It's such a paradox. But Shaquille O'Neal has worn, the last brand he wore was Li-Ning. And at the time, was the largest contract endorsement-wise Li-Ning had ever given to an athlete because he was the most famous. So he's wore Li-Ning, Reebok, his own shoes, a company called Dunk.net that failed, and a discount brand called Shaq. And the last player you mentioned was Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, of course, we know has his own sneakers. And they're not doing that well. Sales are down, but they still have his own shoes. So the top 5 players you mentioned are all wearing different shoes. If we go back to the top 10, there were 10 players, and they all wore the same brand and the same shoe. People went out and flocked to buy this shoe. Because if you didn't like one player, there was probably one of that 10 who you did like. During this time, also, the culture, I mentioned pop culture. Basketball culture became pop culture. So things that someone may wear while they were shooting basketball, they began to wear it when they were not shooting basketball. As if they were college students and they were going to class, they would wear long socks, they would wear sneakers, they may even wear basketball shorts and or a jersey, like whatever they would shoot ball in. That became a part of their regular wear. So we have a time period where basketball is now influencing popular culture. Now, during the late 70s, we have the emergence of choice and the connoisseur. You'll find with any product, if a product is doing well, what will another company attempt to do? to copy, to replicate. If you're going to buy this, buy ours too, because there's so much money to be made in these streets, okay? The companies began to, everybody had a shoe. There were so many brands, because now sneakers were made for utility, to be used for a specific purpose, for athletic competition leisure. But now people are wearing them as outfits. So companies wanted to enter this market, and there were so many brands, people began to subscribe to brands. I'll pause for a moment. Are there, and not just sneakers, any brand, are there brands that you are loyal to? And if so, what are they? Of any product? Nike, okay. Loyal to Nike. What other brands? New Balance, okay. New Balance is huge here. What else? Okay. Red Bull? Okay. Red Bull gives you wings, right? Apple. Apple is global. Apple is a brand, right? Like when people, hold on. When people buy Apple products, many of them are not worried about them exploding while they use them. There's another brand, and it sounds like I'm paying to endorse them now, but I don't have that brand that explodes while you use it. I don't have that. You all are loyal in one way, shape, or form, whether you realize it or not, to particular brands. It may be a particular shoe technology, but this is what happened during that time period. Companies realized that, oh, people are loyal to us. We can stick with them and make products specific to them. That worked for a while, but eventually that failed. During the early 80s, so we're talking the late 70s, the early 80s, something magical happened. How many of you are fans or subscribe to elements of hip-hop culture? Okay, this is one end. By the looks of things that you're wearing, more subscribe to certain elements of hip-hop culture than you may even know. But I'm going to pause to talk about hip-hop for a moment. Hip-hop started in the early to mid 70s. Okay, it really took its roots in the Bronx, New York. Are you familiar with New York City? Okay, the Bronx is a borough in New York. It was started by minorities, specifically Puerto Ricans and blacks. Okay, hip-hop culture is the song of the proletariat. In other words, individuals who did not have a voice, their communities would not hear them, their government would not hear them. They would turn to hip-hop to voice how they were feeling, to music. And this has happened throughout time, but it just so happened that this genre of music was attached to this group of people, the impoverished individuals who thought that they were not heard. Okay? Sneaker culture and hip-hop culture, no matter how you want to look at it, are one. They're intertwined. I will give you an example of what I'm talking about. While we stayed in our stay in Guangzhou, there was a Nike commercial that I watched over and over again over the few days. It was a commercial that featured a song by the Wu-Tang Clan. A song by a member of the Wu-Tang Clan, the ODB, the Old Dirty Bastard. The song the title is Shimmy Shimmy Ya, okay? Shimmy Shimmy Ya would play in the background of this commercial, so I was actually laying down, not looking at the TV, but the TV was on. And I heard the song. I'm like, wait a minute, this is Wu? And then I looked and I saw a basketball court. And there was a young Chinese man who challenged another young Chinese man to a game of basketball, and the fans were rooting them on as they played. But that was the theme of the commercial that I gathered via context. During that time when companies would market hip-hop, market sneakers, they would use hip-hop to do it because the people who wore sneakers were listening to what? To hip-hop. And the people who wore sneakers and listened to hip-hop, most of society found them to be cool, mainly because some saw them as being rebellious. And people who are deemed to be rebellious or thought of being rebellious, they inspire others. It's called fanatic behavior. Here's the point. Companies start to realize, like, hey, wait a minute. We don't like this music, but people who do like it will spend money. And a lot of the people who like it, who will spend money, want to spend money to not look like they're poor. Okay? So companies who didn't like hip-hop began to use hip-hop to sell products. And this definitely happened with sneaker culture. So, so we have so many sneaker brands, and we have a demographic, one major demographic who's buying the shoes. We haven't figured out a way to sell more shoes, and this is how it happened. During this time period, we have the emergence of the technical basketball sneaker. What do you think I mean by technical?
To enhance the athlete's performance.
Yes, perfect. It enhances an athlete's performance. Okay? But a shoe is, we're talking like a sole, an upper, and laces. How much technology could you put into that? I haven't. Let me share a story with you from the year of 1989. Let's see, the coach here. When it's time to go back to school after a break, between breaks, is there a specific time when you may buy school clothes, like new school clothes for school? Well, in America, there's a summer break, okay? And school opens either, depending on where you live, either in August or September. So, where I'm from in Virginia, we start school in September, and I was getting new clothes for the next school year. And I walked into a store called Shoe Show with my mother. And I asked my mother for a particular pair of shoes because they looked cool and they featured this technology, okay? The technology is called Viz Air. An air bubble. There was an air bubble in the heel of the shoe. The shoe was the Nike Air Revolution. By the way, the Jordan 3, the Air Jordan 3, the original, the low-top version of the Nike Air Revolution. So I presented the Nike Air Revolution to my mother. Mom, I would like to get this shoe. Okay? My mother took the shoe from my hand and she looked at it. What do you think she noticed first? The bottom? Yes. The bottom, and specifically the heel. There was a window in the bottom of the shoe. And she was looking directly through the window. And she said to me, before she even looked at the price tag, I'm not paying for that window. And the look I have on my face is the same look I was like, well, I'm looking at my mom like, come on, don't be this way. Like, I'm thinking, don't be that cheap, right? Like, it's not that much more. So my mother this is the reason my mother is my mother. She's pretty smart. She looks at the shoe and notices that the shoe is 3 colors. It's white, it's an all-white shoe. It is royal, and it has a hint of black outline. And it's an outline that's black. And it's a high top. So she sees a shoe that's white and blue, and it's a high top. So she's like, hey, this is a high top Nike that is also white and blue, but it doesn't have Viz Air. You're getting this for back to school. Okay? I'm thinking, well, it's better than not getting anything. So the other shoe was the Nike Air Delta Force, which also featured air. However, you couldn't do what? You couldn't see through it. It didn't feature that technology. So I want to share this with you. The difference between the Nike Air Revolution and the Nike Air Delta Force is that Nike created 2 basketball shoes. One was marketed to someone who was willing to pay the extra dollars for that window, and the other was for the customers who wouldn't pay for that. Now, it had air in there, but you just couldn't see through it. During this time, companies began to develop. Sometimes it was real technology to enhance an athlete's performance, and other times it was a placebo, which is a fake, a fake technology. I'm going to give you examples of fake technology. You mentioned Converse earlier. In the early 90s, Converse created a technology called React Juice. What do you tend to do with juice? Drink it. Okay? So, think of this as the back of the shoe. This is the back of the shoe, and there was a window, a packet, a clear window that had React written on it. And inside that was a bright neon yellow fluid. And if you would move to your left, the fluid would also move where? To your left. If you would move to your right, the fluid would move where? To your right. So this is what Converse said. Our shoe, our basketball shoe, the Converse Aero Jam, worn by Grandmama, Larry Johnson. The Converse Aero Jam features React Juice. So when you go to cut on the basketball court, the juice will move with your body weight and make your cut quicker. And people believed it. And they went out and bought React Juice. So companies like, wait a minute, Nike's making money off this technology. Converse is making money. We have to come up with something. There's a company called LA Gear. You may have heard of LA Gear. LA Gear came up with the catapult. So think of this as the bottom of the shoe again. And there was a spring that was in the heel. So we're going to make the heel this way. Whenever you would take a step, the spring would do what? Yeah, it would pop up. So they said when you jump, the spring will do what to you? It will propel you in the sky. You can dunk like Carl the Mailman Malone, who was a guy who just happened to be able to dunk well. So individuals who wanted to dunk like Carl the Mailman Malone would go out and buy this shoe. Since I'm talking about technology, I got to move forward for just 1 second and mention this. Are you familiar with Kim Kardashian?
Yes.
Wow, she's global, like she's international. Okay. I want to show you how companies are still using placebo technology to sell shoes. Does anyone know what the #2 best-selling sneaker company in the world is?
Nike and Adidas.
Close. Nike is #1. Adidas is about #3.
Air Jordan.
Air Jordan is a separate brand, but it's not that high. It's high, but not that high. Timberland. Good choice. Still not that high. The #2 brand is a brand called Skechers.
Oh, yes, Skechers.
Skechers. This is the type of marketing Skechers is on, what they use. So Kim Kardashian is known a lot for her fashion and for her beauty and also for her figure. Okay? To put it simply, she has a large posterior. Okay? Skechers created a shoe called the Shape Up, which had a unique curved bottom. And they went out and marketed and said, hey, Kim Kardashian wears our shoes, and look at her behind. If you were to buy our shoes, because our shoes aren't flat at the bottom, you're working your glutes every time you step. And if you wear them long enough, you will have a posterior like who? Kim Kardashian. Women went out and bought these shoes in droves. And then one brave woman said, I've been wearing these shoes for a year and my glutes have not changed. I am going to sue you, Skechers. And Skechers like, you got us. But we're going to delay this. We're going to delay this as long as we possibly can. Would you like to settle out of court? Yes, I would, because you're holding me up and I have to pay for court costs. So Skechers settled their lawsuit with others, but not only her, for others who joined. They settled, but think about this for a moment. They made more money than they actually paid out in the what? In the settlement. So it was a calculated loss. So many times companies are not sued on their fake technology because people don't think they don't think that far, but during this time period, technical basketball shoes became a thing. Companies tried to create new and sometimes real, like the Reebok Pump, and sometimes fake, like React Juice by Converse, to enhance the sales of their sneakers. Now, we're moving forward to the mid to late 80s. There's an author of a text, Bobito Garcia. Bobito Garcia states that Pure sneaker culture ends in the year 1987, and this is why. Retro and sneaker culture, besides, I know that Chuck Taylor's been selling it since the 60s, but most companies, if they made a shoe, if you liked it, you had to buy it then, because what would happen to it if you didn't buy it? It would become discontinued, or at least it used to be that way, until retro took form. Retro boomed as far as people will pay for old shoes. Retro started to take a real effect in the year 1999. Globally, 1999 changed how companies marketed shoes. So Barbito Garcia's ends pure sneaker culture with the year 1987 because companies began to re-release older models of shoes. Let me ask you this. I'm going to take off the culture for one moment. How many of you have written a paper for a class? Okay, all of you, right? I was waiting for every hand, so you're like, we all have. Okay. Think about this. What if you wrote this strong paper and you were allowed to reuse this paper for different classes? How many of you would want to write new papers? Hey, I know that's plagiarism. It is. And Pat, listen. When I'm at home, I don't listen. I'm sorry, but here's the point for me. Plagiarism is for me. Companies begin to realize, like, hey, wait a minute. You actually want this shoe from 20 years ago? But this shoe is out. You know what? No problem. Here's the Nike Air Revolution from 1988. Okay? We're going to raise the price $30 more, but here you are. So Garcia ends pure culture in 1887 because companies realized that, hey, people will pay for old shoes. People will pay for nostalgia. I was born in the year 1977. There's a car one of the cars I desired to have was a car made in 1973, and I bought one. It was a 1973 Chevrolet Chevelle. Now, because it was in pretty good condition, but I was looking to restore it piece by piece, and then I got tired and just got rid of it. There were individuals who were a little older than I am who actually had a Chevelle, whether it be in 1971, 72, or 73, who actually had their car in their youth, and now they're much older. What might they do in their older age? Well, if they don't have it anymore, so they go out and do what? Buy it again, because it reminds them of what? Yeah, the days of their youth, the old days, yes, the old days. Nostalgia. There's a price tag for nostalgia. And typically it's a high price tag. You're not going to get nostalgia cheap, folks. So, sneaker companies realized that and they began to re-release old shoes that were outdated and just sell them again at a higher price tag. Sometimes they would change things to make them updated, but typically retro now drives the market. If there's at least one student in here who's wearing a sneaker that's not current, if someone's wearing a Stan Smith Adidas, that shoe's not even a Stan Smith. That shoe's been recycled to the point where they changed the name. Okay, but it's the same shoe from the 60s and the 70s. So, tennis, yes, definitely. Retro, according to Garcia, ended what we now know as pure sneaker culture. I'm going to talk about two more things. It should be close to, what's my time like? We're close to 10 minutes, okay? Gotcha. So, we'll bring up two things and then we'll close it down. And if you have questions, I will address your questions. Someone mentioned earlier, one of you mentioned drawing on sneakers. The arts and crafts portion of sneaker culture has been there almost since the beginning. Because, again, if you buy a pair of sneakers and I buy the same pair, and I'm thinking like, we're not the same people, so why should I draw on mine? Alter the appearance by cutting parts off. Customization right now is huge. There's a young man, a former student of mine, who has a customized shoe business on campus, and people pay him a good amount of money to customize their shoes. There's a gentleman named Mosh in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and people pay him 4 times what they paid for their sneakers to customize their shoes in a unique way. Now, he does a great job, but the customization of sneakers is becoming a big business, and you don't need to go to school to do that. You just need to have artistic ability and to be creative. This is the last portion. A hunting we will go. Many times, if individuals are looking to be unique with sneakers, they go off the beaten path to find them. So I'll ask, are there places here you may go to purchase shoes that you may not tell somewhere else where you got them? I'm not talking like I went to the mall or I went to the store down the street. Is there like a secret locale where you may go and you may not tell your friends because you don't want them to go and buy the shoes that you have? Okay? This became popular. This is a staple of sneaker culture. Where did you get those? To walk into a room and someone stopped you like, excuse me, sir, I have to ask you, where did you get those? Okay.